At this point, many of my subscribers are already aware of how much of a shifty, dishonest little weasel Vaush is, so to some this video may feel rather redundant considering the slew of anti-Vaush contents that I have done in the past. However, there are many young people out there that are none the wiser to his bullshit, and it is for this reason why I am producing this video today, to document and showcase how Vaush utilizes these slippery debate tactics in an effort to manipulate the audience into accepting his premises and views as automatically correct, and the opposing views and premises as automatically incorrect. If you are a subscriber to Vaush, I'm not saying that you can't enjoy his content for what it is. We all have our guilty pleasures, but you need to be made aware of the weaselly little games that he plays in order to control the discourse. This video is not going to be geared towards addressing any of his arguments or beliefs directly. As far as I'm concerned, you could agree with Vaush on 100% of everything and still take pause with his sophistry. Rather, this video is concerned primarily with his method of argumentation, and why this method of argumentation is fallacious. And if you're somebody who cares about left-wing politics, if you're somebody who cares about the truth, you need to be made aware of how exactly the way in which he conducts himself during these debates actively does harm to the cause by poisoning the discourse. If you're not a left-winger, stick around anyways because you're still going to get a kick out of this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. While the forming of parasocial relationships in and of itself isn't necessarily a form of direct psychological manipulation, it still has an important role to play with respect to the way in which the audience interprets whatever debate/discussion he may be having with whomever. Parasocial relationships are a one-way relationship in which one individual expends their time, energy, and support for another individual who is completely unaware of their existence. And on the internet, where you have all these online personas with their respective platforms, these sorts of one-way relationships organically emerge between the audience and the content creator, as the content creator is an active personality that countless viewers can relate to. It's the same phenomenon that emerges with Hollywood actors, except with the streamers the parasocial bonds are far stronger since you're literally spending hours out of your day listening to this person talk, play video games, read news articles, conduct live debates, etc., as though you are right there in the room with them. The result is that the person starts to feel like your friend, or a member of your tribe, so you become hyper keen to other people's bullshit. But whenever the leader of the tribe, or the member of the tribe, i.e. Vaush, conducts bullshit themselves, you're far less likely to pick up on it. Even worse, when it is brought to your attention, you outright defend it, as many Vaushites do. And Vaush is aware of it too, which is why he actively cultivates it. If one subscribes to his Twitch, or goes to his website vaush.gg, they can post special emojis, post texts in special color, and even have him read their comments off live in front of thousands of people. If one were to donate money to Vaush, he will in response acknowledge their existence, validating the audience member and giving their brains a hit of dopamine. Conversely, if one were to piss him off too much or challenge him on anything too aggressively, he will either punish them with emotionally abusive language at best, or outright ban them at worst. Most of the audience already agrees with most of what he has to say, and on top of that, many of them have the same emotional bond with him as one might have with a brother, or a best friend. They are spending hours out of their day interacting with him on a regular basis after all. He speaks confidently and eloquently on a broad number of subjects, he has the power to mute and kick his opponents at will, and he has hundreds of people donating super chats to him directly each and every day. Because of this, Vaush has the power to dictate the pace, narrative, and the platform surrounding the discussion, which means that he ultimately controls the discourse. In other words, before the debate has even begun, both his audience and the layman viewing him are going to be primed to agree with whatever Vaush has to say, and on top of that, they will also be less likely to pick up on his rhetorical tactics. So much so that he could be outright admitting to it in the titles of his videos, and people will still just brush it off as him being ironic. No matter how rationally or reasonably his opponents may argue their points, for the aforementioned reasons, all he has to do is read a few Wikipedia articles about a subject to digest surface-level knowledge on it, so that he can project a veneer of credibility and present himself as an authority, and his audience will be none the wiser. Since many of them are just there to have their opinions validated and watch their favorite streamer destroy the opposition with facts and logic. I hope I don't have to explain why this environment is not conducive to healthy discourse on a topic, when most of the group is just slanted to agree with the proprietor of the platform. Debates should be done in a clean, regulated format with a moderator, opening statements written, and rules set at the onset. Vaush seldom does these kinds of debates because of how much it evens the playing field. Whenever Vaush faces a point of strong disagreements with his audience, he will oftentimes gaslight the people in his chat, that is, casting doubt on their thoughts, grievances, and perception of reality, such as when Vaush was commenting on the debate between Richard Wolff and Destiny. The following clips I took from a video by Socialism for All. You will hear a bit of his commentary here. Shout out to S4A for catching it. He's got a channel as well, link to the description below.
I don't have anything wrong or against like long-winded answers, but at many points it felt like Richard Wolff just did not engage with a direct point. I'll give you a few examples that I can remember. I didn't write down any points. If anyone disagrees with me on these, then I encourage you to look back at the debate. I do not watch this debate rooting for Destiny. I don't know how anyone coming into this could think that I did so. That's totally okay. If you're that incapable of understanding like very basic arguments.
So this is what Vaush does, like a fucking 10-year-old. No offense to 10-year-olds. They don't know better. Vaush does. When somebody is disagreeing with him, making him look bad on his show, he just flips out. Anyway, this isn't mature behavior. Continuing.
And that disagreeing with the person means that you react in that way, then you probably like aren't capable of understanding my arguments anyway. You probably like me because you think that I'm handsome or you like my deep voice, okay?
Right there. What you're hearing right now is Vaush gaslighting his chat. If you disagree with me, then you're just stupid, you don't know how to comprehend arguments, you must only like me for my looks, yada yada yada. I don't know what's more pathetic. The petty narcissism of this small-minded streamer, or the fact that his fans actually begin to self-deprecate in response to the abuse.
Sorry for being stupid, but he did say a few points in market socialism that seemed to have some merit.
Like a battered housewife, I swear. Vaush is especially guilty of this behavior whenever he's debating a topic that he is on the wrong side of, or whenever he is up against so-called tankies, or people that have a positive view of really existing socialism. In an effort to discredit his opponents, he will bring their sanity into question, he will bring their emotional stability into question, and even their perception of reality itself. He did it in his debate with Default.
I know you don't know anything about political economy, but low approval ratings can be a sign of healthy discourse.
Don't assume my own ignorance.
You can take advantage of their lower labor standards? Holy shit, dude. I take it back. You're not a fascist. Hello. Welcome, brother. Welcome, fellow capitalist. Hello. How you doing? You're insane. How do I keep having these arguments? Honestly, they're doing capital investments in growing labor markets. Dude, you clearly have no idea what you're talking about. Why are you wasting your time on this conversation?
And he frequently did it to me in my debate with him as well.
Considering we literally...
No, I don't...
They saved the world
communists to Nazis.
I am a
compare the
communist.
Soviets to it. No, you're not.
Yeah,
you're a Soviet. You're a Soviet defender. The thing that I want to do is distance me and communism. Hold on. I want to distance socialism as much as possible from you lunatics. So the more I do to publicly indicate how horrible you all are, the more I do for the proletariat. So you know, in the Soviet Union, workers were paid wages. They worked quotas that were given to them by party officials, unelected party officials.
You don't know what wage labor is. And yeah, they were elected. They were elected by these councils.
They were elected by other party officials.
They were elected by, it was councils. It was council democracy.
By councils of party officials. Non-party officials did not vote on who became a party official. I know more about this than you do.
No, you don't. The way there was council democracy, so all the workplaces were consolidated within Soviets, and then generally the vote.
We can't have this conversation if you're not educated enough on the Soviet Union to even understand how their economy works.
Guys,
just so you guys know, when I got an email from this person who I'm talking to, they said it would be different than the Mel debate. They said like, no, I know my shit. I don't know why
I do know my shit. You're just not giving me the benefit of the doubt because you're trying to paint me as insane in front of your audience.
All I've done is try to talk about these issues with you. You've done all the legwork on that, okay?
I'm crazy, Default's crazy, Moppin is crazy, Jimmy Dore is crazy. What a coincidence that everyone to the left of Vaush's shit-lib takes is just crazy. Don't listen to him, they're just lunatics. Again, I repeat, this man is trying to emotionally manipulate you, either into doubting your own thoughts and feelings, or doubting the thoughts and sanity of whoever he is debating. Because if he can do that, then it is an easy way for him to discredit his opponent without actually having to address their arguments or conceding ground on any solid points that they have to make. And you cannot win an argument by doing this. Whether or not the person you are debating is crazy is completely irrelevant as to whether or not their points hold up to scrutiny. Not only is this the language of an abusive, predatory person, it's also incredibly intellectually lazy, but more on that point later. First, on top of constantly trying to make people doubt their own thoughts and sanity, he also frequently tries to paint a negative image of his opponents in the minds of his audience as a means to immediately discredit them before they have even made their arguments, otherwise known as poisoning the well. Of course, to the intellectually honest, arguments and good points should hold up against criticism and stand on their own merit, regardless of which person is making them. Hypothetically, you could have a physicist who is a crackhead and beats his wife, but through rigorous research, he discovers the mathematical formula that would yield a stable nuclear fusion reaction, granting humanity an abundance of clean energy. Sure, the guy might be a junkie and a wife beater, but are we really going to throw out his research because of it? According to Debate Master Vaush, the answer is yes, because he's a lunatic junkie, a crazy wife beater, genocide denier, etc. Therefore, everything he says is invalid, apparently. During his debate with Jackson Hinkle on whether or not Assad's government did in fact carry out chemical weapons attacks on civilians, within the first 2 minutes of the debate, Vaush opens by immediately trying to brand Hinkle an Assad apologist, a conspiracy theorist.
That's why we're here. We're going to talk about it.
I'm sure. All right, so a little bit of a preamble before we get into this. I suspect this is probably going to be a waste of time because I have a lot of experience debating Holocaust deniers. I know that generally speaking, when people form their opinions based on conspiracism, it's usually not because they actually have a vested interest in the facts. It's usually because they have like a set of biases that existed beforehand, and they'll engage in like selective reasoning to adopt any beliefs that they can use to post hoc justify those, pre-existing biases.
This is just one example of Vaush trying to prime his audience to accept his positions as the obviously correct and rational one by trying to smear his opponent as a crazy conspiracy theorist in leagues with Holocaust deniers. This isn't the only time either. He does it repeatedly throughout the debate.
Then it's not alleged.
It's interesting that you don't call yourself an Assad defender when your apparent defense of the regime extends beyond the one incident where we have whistleblowers from the OPCW, but extends broadly to the entire range of information we have on the subject. Again, this isn't what the debate is supposed to be about, and conspiracism is always like a rabbit hole because, again, I've argued with Holocaust deniers. Did you know there was one investigation from the Red Cross that found that there were no deaths at this camp back in 1933? That's curious. But we haven't even gotten to like so when we're talking about conspiracies, I find that it's actually better before digging into the conspiratorial elements to actually talk about possible alternatives, okay? So you don't seem to be willing to commit to the Syrian and Russian narrative on this particular issue, which is fine. I mean, you're not like employed by Syria or Russia that I know of, okay? And they said, with respect to Inspector
Is this
A,
the doctored
that's the
report?
Ian Harrington person. Huh?
Go on.
Wait, what'd you say?
Go on. Go on.
What'd you? Nah, come on. Don't be a coward. What'd you
No,
say?
I was
Share
just
with the
fucking
class.
with you. I was just fucking with you. I was like, is this the doctored report? But go on.
Okay, gotcha. Very nice. Is this from a Goldstein? Very, very common joke I'm familiar with from your kind.
Eaters
Oh
on the
my
ground.
God, dude, you guys really are indistinguishable from like Sandy Hook
So,
deniers either.
so Vaush, can I
You won't
continue?
fight against the truth. Like, dude, come on.
Vaush,
Take your
I'm going
dick
to
out of your
continue.
I've seen him do this with the far right as well, but it is much more prevalent whenever he is debating someone to the left of Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton. He does this all the time whenever he is on the wrong side of a subject and he is confronted by somebody who actually knows what they are talking about. Against most people, he doesn't need to bust out the bad faith, but against people on the far left, evidently he does. But regardless of who he is doing it to, poisoning the well is just fallacious. It's just another way for him to prime his audience to accept his premises as the correct ones while terminating critical thought on the subject at hand. Horshoe theory is a way of looking at the political spectrum in which you have the center, which is considered the rational and pragmatic position, and then the two opposite ends of an extreme pole, that is, the far left and the far right. And that extreme ideologies, due to being on the fringes, have a lot more in common with each other than not, and that the outcome from said extreme poles has always led to disaster, and thus, we are better off going with the status quo in the nice, safe center.
Considering we literally...
No, I don't.
They
I
saved
don't
the
compare
world from...
communists to Nazis.
I am a
compare the
communist.
Soviets to it. No, you're not.
Yeah, I
you're
am.
a Soviet. You're a Soviet defense.
Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. There's a million and one reasons why this position is bullshit. Anyone who knows their history would know that it was the communists who have been the bulwark against fascism historically, and that it has been liberalism that has propped up and is continuing to prop up fascism to this day. Despite the fact that fascist and liberal values are incompatible, fascism is fundamentally not a threat to private property. And yet somehow, according to Vaush, the people who are fighting for socialism, fighting for civil rights, and increased democratic and economic equality are somehow the same as the people who are actively fighting against those things. Yeah, you see the problem here. Vaush frequently invokes horseshoe theory not only as an easy way to win argument points, but to silence the discourse and manipulate people into immediately accepting his opponent's premise as the false one. And of course, this is intellectually dishonest. Don't look too deep into it, don't do your own research, don't doubt the mainstream narrative on anything, even though there's a ruling class whose interest it is in to manipulate the narrative in their favor, because if you do, then you're in leagues with Holocaust deniers.
On the subject. Again, this isn't what the debate is supposed to be about, and conspiracism is always like a rabbit hole because, again, I've argued with Holocaust deniers. Did you know there was one investigation from the Red Cross that found that there were no deaths at this camp back in 1933? That's curious.
Regions, possibly. But you'll have to remember that so many of the things that have been going around on social media about that have been debunked. I mean, there was a video going around purporting to show police beating up a man for owning the Quran. It turns out it was from Indonesia. CNN.
Do we really want to go down this road?
I'm sorry, may I not be interrupted, please?
Okay, you do.
Mel
All right.
Turson.
All right,
I
I'm sorry.
there are flaws in the
Denial.
official
Oh, yeah.
narrative. You're
No, no,
trying
no.
to
I know
take
flaws
me
in
as
the
a-
narrative.
I know what you're doing. I
Flaws
didn't
in the
deny anything.
Oh, I've heard that before too. Hey, did you know that when the Soviet Union originally arrived at the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp, the flag that they...
Right. So
Whoa,
you don't
no,
equate
whoa,
communists
slow
with
down
Nazis
there,
and
Malpin.
Okay, all
Did
right.
you... Wait,
Okay,
hey...
continue, right?
Did you know that the plaque that they originally posted suggested that 6 million died there, when in reality the updated number later said 1.47 million? Did you know that there was an order...
But Vaush, the Holocaust is the most well-documented and independently verified event in history, while the topics that your opponents are bringing to the table are oftentimes contested, as in, there's actually some degree of plausible deniability, or lack of plurality of data to support one side or another, and to claim your opponent is like a Holocaust denier in every single instance is to claim that the mainstream media gets it right 100% of the time, even though they clearly don't. So if we go back in time 20 years, when Bill O'Reilly was on Fox News talking about weapons of mass destruction, are we supposed to automatically believe him because if we don't, we're like Holocaust deniers? Or how about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was the provocation for the Vietnam War? US Army generals came out and admitted that it never happened, and that it was just an excuse to drag the country into Vietnam. Are the US Army generals like Holocaust deniers too? According to Vaush, everything the government and the news says is true, so apparently the answer is yes. At the end of the day, it's just a way for him to terminate critical thought and manipulate his followers into automatically accepting the premise of his opponents as wrong without actually trying to understand their position or address their arguments. And again, you cannot win an argument by doing this. At this point, one of his parasocially brainwashed followers might say, quote, "So what if he uses debate tactics and tries to manipulate the audience? What's wrong with manipulating people away from potentially harmful positions?" Well, you see, Radlib, the key to developing a correct political line lies in one's ability to discover the truth and have the facts on their side. The facts by themselves should back up your arguments and stand up on their own, as the truth needs no fallacies nor sophistry to back it up. So when you have somebody who does need to rely on fallacies and sophistry to try and sell their positions, are the people that they are selling their positions to arriving at those conclusions because they've analyzed the data and they've arrived there through rational and scientific thought? Or are they arriving at those conclusions because their favorite streamer tricked and manipulated them into believing it? Again, the long-term consequences of this is it undermines our credibility. Because if we're on record for lying and trying to manipulate people, then people have less reason to believe us in the long term. Because the truth can and will inevitably resurface as it currently is as I speak. And if the answer is the latter, then your worldview is ultimately weaker than mine since it requires gaslighting, well poisoning, personal attacks, and strawman to back it up when the facts clearly aren't there to do it for you. Anybody remember the whole Marx, Engels, and Lenin would have voted Biden bullshit that Vaush was pushing last year? Anybody remember the poorly put together documents where he quote-sniped Marx, Engels, and Lenin out of context in a pathetic attempt to extrapolate the conclusion that they would have voted for the Democrats? Or how about when he claims that he didn't quote them out of context and that he did indeed read the theory, that is, the written word of these men, and proceeds to praise himself because, as it turns out, the theory agreed with him the whole time, and therefore the people constantly telling him to read theory are wrong. I actually read the literature. I did not quote them out of context. Those are Vaush's exact words. That's the claim he is making here, that he actually read the theory. But wait, no he didn't. He didn't quote the theory from the actual literature. He quoted the theory being quoted by the articles that he read quoting the actual literature.
This second quote from Engels, too, he seems to not actually have read, but instead Googled for and found in, again, an International Socialist Review article. If you're gonna try to back up your points from Marx, Lenin, etc., at least read what they said. Don't go
what's
quote mine. What especially
wait. It's not the review article. Isn't the quote mine? I read the article, but do I have to read the whole book every time? I read the article and the surrounding Okay.
But Vaush, you said you actually read the theory. Why would you lie and said that you read something that you actually didn't? But hold on, it gets much worse. Not only did Vaush lie about reading the theory, he lies about what Marx, Engels, and Lenin actually had to say about participating in electoral politics. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into this subject because Hakeem Badampanada and Socialism for All made videos covering extensively in detail exactly how and why Vaush is fractally wrong on this. I encourage you guys to check out those videos independently. Instead, I am simply going to bring up a quote that he used by Engels to prove his point. We seek the abolition of classes. What is the means of achieving it? The political domination of the proletariat. Revolution is the supreme act of politics. Whoever wants it must also want the means, political action, which prepares for it, which gives the workers the education for revolution, and without which the workers will always be duped. But the politics which are needed are working class politics. The Workers' Party must be constituted not as the tail of some bourgeois party. The Workers' Party must be constituted not as the tail of some bourgeois party, but as an independent party with its own objective politics. Here, Engels is saying the complete opposite of what Vaush is suggesting that we go out and do. He's not saying that we vote and support a right-wing neoliberal party. He's clearly stating that the workers need to put up their own candidates independent of ruling class parties to run in elections. He then goes on to quote Lenin, making the point that because Lenin supported British Labour, an actual socialist party with socialist politics, that's somehow equivalent to backing the Democrats, which are, once again, a right-wing neoliberal party, supposedly all in pursuits of demonstrating the failures of the Democrats so that we can step in with an alternative. At the same time, he was also arguing around this time that once Biden is in office, we can push him left. We can bully Biden as well as the Democrats into passing progressive reform, which are helpful to the agenda of the left. Well, that turned out to be a lie as well, as Vaush has on frequent occasions not only defended Biden's continuation of some of Trump's most reactionary policies, such as migrants' children being jammed in cages, he has also taken some positions to the right of Joe Biden as well. That's right, Vaush is now advocating for policies to the right of Biden, that is, for the endless occupation of Afghanistan, since we wouldn't want to give it to China now, would we?
If we pulled out, if we allow these countries to destabilize, you know what happened within 10 years? Guaranteed, you know what happened within 10 years? I bet you more than anything. America pulls out with no exit strategy, no long-term plan for supporting these countries. These countries fail, and they turn into, I mean, we're talking Cambodia level. We're talking fields of corpses. China will come in with boots on the ground and fix their problems.
You know, this whole argument he was making last year that we're gonna push him left starts to sound extremely disingenuous when he's not only defending Biden's rightist policies at the moment, as well as agitating for endless military occupation. Now for the cherry on top of all of this. During the Force the Vote saga as of the start of this year, when Jimmy Dore and progressives were putting pressure on AOC and the Squad to float Medicare for All to Pelosi's desk, Vaush was on the pragmatic team of leftists, not only shitting all over Dore, but heavily railing against Force the Vote as well. That's right, here we have leftists that are actually trying to push our congressfolk left on important issues. Here we have leftists that are actually going out and doing the real work that Vaush said that we were going to do, and he is actively agitating against them. He is actively agitating against the very agenda he said that he was going to be pushing for once Biden was in office. This is all public knowledge, people. You can go back and watch all of his streams last year where he says all of this, as well as his recent streams where he does polemics against Jimmy Dore and progressives. One thing Vaush is known for doing is speaking with absolute confidence on literally every topic that comes to the forefront, whether it be something that he is well informed on or a topic he hasn't thoroughly researched. He often speaks in sweeping absolutes, with the assumption that what he is saying is just automatically correct, and that we should just take his word for it that he's an authority on the matter. However, whenever he is faced with adequate pushback on his blanket statements, or faced with the possibility that he might be wrong about something, rather than correcting himself, instead, he will backpedal, or act like he was taken out of context and people just misunderstood what he said. He will then rephrase his original statements with additional nuance in order to obfuscate and introduce plausible deniability. Here are some examples of this. Exhibit A.
If we pulled out, if we allow these countries to destabilize, you know what happened within 10 years? Guaranteed, you know what happened within 10 years? I bet you more than anything. America pulls out with no exit strategy, no long-term plan for supporting these countries. These countries fail, and they turn into, I mean, we're talking Cambodia level. We're talking fields of corpses. China will come in with boots on the ground and fix their problems. And I disagree with Vaush military occupation of the Middle East. These countries became destabilized due to our presence there in the first place. When did I say otherwise? Well, wait, first of all, I'm pro the United States pulling out of Afghanistan. I don't think I actually said otherwise explicitly in that clip. I just...
Sure, he never said that he wanted to endlessly occupy the region for the rest of time, but what other conclusions is one supposed to draw from his rhetoric? The implications of Vaush's statement here was that he doesn't want Afghanistan to be a Chinese vassal state, and if that were to happen, that would be a bad thing. The point is that it is very clear that through the irresponsible use of his rhetoric, that he is trying to fearmonger about China, and thus, it would be preferable to endlessly occupy these regions since Yellow Man bad. And when he realized how much the statements made him look and sound like a neocon, he backed off of it. Well, actually, I never said that I wanted to stay in Afghanistan, yada yada yada, but Vaush, that is exactly what we can infer from your rhetoric here, that you do want to stay in Afghanistan because you don't want it handed over to China. Evidently, our imperialism is a preferable alternative to Chinese imperialism. Exhibit B during the Caleb Maupin debate. He not only backpedals, he also creates a false divide between being charitable or more critical of the USSR and engaging in bad optics. Caleb rightfully calls Vaush out in his tweets when he insults revolutionaries and communists, and then he proceeds to walk back on his original statements and speak out of both sides of his mouth in an attempt to rephrase what he said as to, once again, avoid owning up to something stupid or shitty that he said.
So there are a number of points here that I think are maybe a mischaracterization of some of the things that I believe in. First of all, with regards to, so your ultimate argument is one against gatekeeping, effectively, that there's ultimate harm done to the movement when you engage in any action to distinguish the broader, the right-left from the parts of it that you want to excise. Unfortunately, excising undesirables from your movement is, I think you as a fan of the USSR would probably know, basically a necessary part of any revolutionary activity. With regards to the tankies that are referred to, for example, I'm not referring to people who, for example, are at any point not as critical of the USSR as I am, or people who see value in some of the revolutionary movements in the developing world. I think these are perfectly fine things.
The issue with this is that by that standard, Vaush himself has set, if you ever acknowledge any good about the Soviet Union or Third World revolutionaries, you are automatically engaging in bad optics and therefore should be excised from his movements. Again, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth as to soften the blow and display a veneer of nuance that he never exercised in the original statement. Exhibit C. Once again, the Jackson-Hinkle debate.
The displacement of millions. There have been dozens of chemical weapons attacks that have been attributed to him and verified by a number of international organizations designed to engage in peacekeeping and find facts. So,
but what I will say is that you said a bunch of international groups and activist groups had confirmed weapons attacks. That's a pretty broad statement. This is actually the first time that the OPCW has ever been able to go on the ground in Syria and investigate a chemical weapons attack. And that's why this is so important.
During the Syrian civil war, there are estimations on the use of chemical weapons that range from, I believe, 32 is the conservative number that most people use.
Not all the things that you just said. I said that a lot of the key chemical weapons attacks have been contested by very reputable sources. For example, one of the most notable that the U.S. had indicated was a...
So saying that evidence is not a slam dunk and should not be acted upon is not the same as repudiating the existence of those attacks to begin with.
Well, no, you allege, you allege that they definitively took... You allege that Assad, without a doubt, perpetrated all of these attacks. That's what you said.
No, I did not. Wait, I did not say that, actually.
You did.
What I said is that there was... Wait, hold on. What I actually said was that there is undeniable evidence which has been corroborated across many international peacekeeping organizations that the use of chemical weapons has taken place in Syria, the majority of which have been attributed to Assad.
Note what he just did here. He went from asserting with absolute confidence that all of these chemical weapon attacks did in fact happen at the hands of Assad. Hinkle contests him on the point, and then he immediately moves to saying that what he actually meant was that there have been dozens of attacks simply attributed to Assad. Notice, from absolute confidence to plausible deniability. I'm sure that's what Vaush actually meant, considering how hard he came out of the gates to smear Hinkle as an Assad apologist and a Holocaust denier, right? But you know how it is, that's the Vaush way. Speak in absolutes with ironclad confidence on topics that you haven't thoroughly studied, and when you get any substantial pushback, or the lightest hint that you might be wrong about something, immediately walk back and reword what you said so you don't have to take responsibility for your rhetoric or cede ground on any points to your opponent. It's fucking bullshit, and this isn't the first time he does it either. He repeatedly backpedals in his discussion with Jackson, making extraordinary claims with psychotic levels of confidence, and then walking back on them when he is caught in the lie.
If this is the case, you do realize Ian Henderson did conclude that there was a chemical weapons attack, or at least that was where he believed the evidence led. You're the one making the claim that there was no chemical weapons attack, but in doing so, you're citing evidence from an engineering report from a person whose conclusion aligned with mine.
Vaush tried to claim that Ian Henderson, one of the lead investigators of the report, did in fact confirm there was a chemical weapons attack. And when Jackson catches him in the lie, look at what happens.
You continue to claim that he said that without a, beyond a reasonable doubt, but...
Wait, I did not at any point... Wait, please do not lie about what I've said.
What did you say? What did you say?
His claim was not that there was no chemical attack, only that the canisters were planted there rather than dropped. His contention was with the deployment of the canisters. If this is the case, you do realize Ian Henderson did conclude that there was a chemical weapons attack.
What is it with this fucking guy? Exhibit D. Vaush on pedophilia and child pornography. Shoutouts to Stale Burrito for collecting these clips.
Okay, so if you were to... So, there's pedophiles, right, who buy child pornography. Mm-hmm. Would you say they should not be held responsible for doing that?
Yes.
Really? Even though they're directly supporting child rape?
Yeah, still don't care. I still think that, zoophile porn, drawn stuff, it should be 100% legal. In fact, and this is going to be a real hot take, I have yet to hear a convincing moral or legal argument as to why possession of child pornography should be illegal. When have I ever acted out of consequence? When have I ever been oh, actually, I'm going deontological in this? Well, I literally defended fucking buying child porn. So my position is that I am anti-child porn. I don't think it's a good thing to have it. It's possible to, have a bunch of CP and never hurt the kid.
Funny how the guy who is so concerned about optics to the point where he won't even educate himself on socialism because of said optics has on frequent occasions defended the consumption of child pornography while looking like the CEO of NAMBLA himself. It's easy as pie to sit here and claim that he's COINTELPRO. After all, that's what many of my comrades believe him to be. It can't be that this guy is just a lib, he has to be a government agent as well trying to subvert the left. But I think the answer is a lot simpler than that. Others say he's a grifter. Even I'm guilty of making that claim in the past. But to call him a grifter is to imply that he doesn't believe his own bullshit. To the contrary, I think he does. I think he believes in everything that comes out of his mouth. Believe it or not, the answer is even simpler than that. It is easy to attribute malice or nefarious intent to what can be better described as petty narcissism and one-track mindedness. So if you want to know the truth about Vaush, that's what it is. Vaush is nothing more than a pampered, narrow-minded, attention-whoring, egotistical trust fund baby from Beverly Hills. That is all. All this dude cares about is being right about everything and fueling his ego, and having hundreds of thousands of people putting one on a pedestal and throwing money at you every day is a surefire way to do that. It's the reason why he constantly tries to deter people from going further left. It's because if they left his myopic sphere of rad-lib thought, then he would lose subscribers, he would lose donations, and he would lose his audience. It's a very similar trick to what a priest does to keep people showing up to the church and giving them donations. Lie and misrepresent the opposition and condemn them as heretics. Or in this case, being like Nazis or Holocaust deniers or whatever. It's the reason why he's so reluctant to bring Marxist-Leninists on his channel, and yet he'll platform 3 Nazis in a single evening. And whenever he does have one of us on, he immediately argues in bad faith. This, of course, is deliberate. He sees us as a scourge on the left, which is ironic considering it is Vaush's very advocacy and rhetoric that is actively poisoning the dialogue about important conversations that need to be had. So there you have it. You now know the true nature of Vaush. He's not an FBI agent, nor is he a grifter. He's just a shallow, petty, willfully ignorant, and narcissistic individual who's out to chase clout and sell his unique brand of leftism, which is really just repackaged liberalism. After all, that's what radical liberalism is at the end of the day. It is a liberalism which dresses itself up as leftism, but the moment you scratch the surface, it is ultimately an ideology that is homogenous with the status quo. An ideology that is held together by glue and tape, since evidently it requires all this gaslighting, ad homing, well poisoning, distorting of the facts, and other bad faith tricks in order to hold it together. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe, and share with your neighbors on social media. If you would like to help me in more substantial ways than that, however, consider donating to my Patreon. Speaking of which, shout out to my Patreons. Your gratuity is greatly appreciated. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. I hope it's been informative, and I will see you guys next time.